All right, so for the second item, I'm going to be working on forms and reports and creating, and basically both of these are a simple flow through. I'm not going to get into a lot of the complexities in forms or reports. I'm simply going to move some things around and create some things. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a form, and I'm going to pull it out the form wizard because that's pretty easy. You must save the query instructor class. Okay, yeah, we're going to save it. Excellent. Then what happens when you pull in your form wizard, you have your instructor class join what the query is based off of this form. So in my case, it's based off of a query. Now, if I just wanted, normally what happens when you put together a form is you have the form based on a table that allows you to streamline information. So for instance, if I want to come in and I want to base my form off instructor data as an example. And I'm going to have the instructor ID, first name, last name, education, and phone numbers all be things that I'm going to add. Next, these are the way it's going to lay out. There's the tabular, which means straight down, the columnar, which means that it's going to be grouped, and then the data sheet, which looks like a whole lot like what it's in the database, the table itself. I'm going to choose columnar. And it's going to call it instructor data, open the form to view or enter information, modify the form's design. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open the form to view or enter information. And it looks like this. Now, if I don't, for instance, a lot of this goes all the way out here. If I want to modify it, what I can actually do is I could go to right click and I could go to the design view, which is going to look a lot like this. And I can come along and I can do things like, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to decrease its size. So I'm going to decrease its size a little bit here. If I wanted to, this instructor ID, right now I just basically enter it in. I could auto number it. I could go in and I could change it to auto number. If I click on individual items, for instance, this is first name, I can change the size here. So I can modify how they appear. And then I can grab this, I can move this up this if I wanted to, and I can continue with these modifications. I can click on this, and if I look at the properties window over here, these are all the different. So my first name, it's the control source's first name. Where it says control source here, if I click on this, down drop, there's all the different items related to the table. I could choose some sort of format. So if I wanted some input mask, I could put it in there. I could change the text format so it appears different. So I can do rich text, plain text. I could bold it. I can change a border color to it. So if I wanted to come in here and I wanted to do border color, I could choose, Axis theme, this one. So now what's going to happen is when I go to my view, things are going to change. So that's the one I changed the border view. So each one of these has the ability to modify. Once again, right click, design view, here it is. Now, forms get really powerful because this is how I look at and modify the data. But if I go to this very end one, I can put in a new instructor. So I'm going to put in 5. Oh, it's auto-numbered. Perfect. So I didn't know it was auto-numbered. So last name, I'm going to do, first name, I'm going to do Bob, Narc, because, hey, whatever. And then education, yes. And phone number, notice it's as a phone number itself. And then it, 6, right? So now what happens is Bob Narc is now part of it. And it's been, I believe it's been auto-numbered. Yeah, it has been auto-numbered. Perfect. It's already set for auto-number. So what happens is my instructor data is how I enter in the information, and if I go to the instructor data table, which is right here, what's going on is I actually insert the information. I insert the information using the form, and the form then turns around and puts it in the table itself. So that is an example of a form. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you an example of a report itself. Now a report, interesting thing about a report is if you base a report on a query. So if you remember my instructor num query, I can come along and I can put, and this is also an example of the item I've just added. So this says I've added Bob Narc as in my instructor number. So I put in 5. Now notice for some reason it's not pulling up because, bad example. Let's go to my design view and see what's going on here. So my instructor number is 5. So if I go to my class table, my instructor data, 5. Interesting. Oh, probably because of the fact that there's no, let's go to my instructor number query trying to see, this is how you kind of troubleshoot what's going on, because for some reason this isn't pulling up. Let me actually run that. Right, instructor number should be 5, and it doesn't pull anything. So I'd have to figure out what's going on with that. I'm interested, but I'm not going to worry about this right this second. So anyway, the idea is now in my in my instructor data, I have Bob Nark, who's all there for all this information. He's got no classes that are assigned because I haven't created a class yet. But what I can do is, let's say for instance, my instructor number query, I want to report. So I'm able to run a report based off of instructors all the time. So if I click instructor number query and I want to do create, and I want to create a report, right? So here's my report wizard. It's going to look like this. It's going to automatically pull up with the instructor number query. I'm going to put in my class number, my room number, and the instructor number. So those are all going to be the information I'm going to include on my report. And it's going to sort by instructor number. So all the different class numbers and room numbers that are associated with that, it's going to put under instructor number. And I can sort it. I'm going to sort it by class number under each one of them, right? I'll do room number, make it easy. So on each one of them, it should sort by room numbers. And then I'm going to have it in a stepped view. Okay, so I'm going to preview the report. So what's going to happen is, the first thing when I run that report is it's going to flow through the query, and when it flows through the query that asks for the instructor number, I'm going to go ahead and put instructor number 1. So my report is going to be based solely off instructor number 1 because it flows through this query. So if I just wanted to see all the instructors, I could do instructor number query and then base it off the instructor data, and it would just show me all the queries. Excuse me, all the instructors. But because of the fact that I wanted to base it off of a specific instructor, I flow the instructor number report through this query. So as soon as it accesses that query, it's going to then turn around and ask you for the instructor number. So here's my instructor number. So this is all the things related to instructor number 1 with the room number and those class numbers. If I wanted all the instructors, I can do this 2 different ways when I ran it. So I'm going to close this print preview, and I'm going to go ahead and close this particular report, right? So there's my report. If I come to instructor number query, right? So instructor number query, I go to design. If I want to do it for all the instructors, I can click off this, right? Ideally, let's just do it this way. Oh, cancel. Okay. Oh, let's do it again. Hold on. Enter instructor number, right? So I can still keep this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it, whoop, and I'm going to call it instructor number all query. And usually what happens is you start adding these, you need to have a naming convention. So it should have the type of query, what it does, and how it's pulled, and you should go into that. But so for instance, I have the instructor number all query, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this out right here. So now what happens if I had another report that was based on the instructor number all, like I could duplicate this and change it, what's going to happen is, instructor number, I took it out of instructor number, that's funny, as opposed to the all. Alright, so let's go to design view, instructor number all, and I come along in here, I'm going to take all that out, and then I'm going to run it, and it's just going to have all the instructor numbers. Now, what I'm going to do as an example is I'm going to go to the design view of the instructor number query, make sure it doesn't have that information. So now what's going to happen, notice there's no criteria here. So now when I run the instructor number query, let's see. Yes, I do. It wasn't saved. That happens sometimes. So now what should happen if I click on this, it pulls all the instructor numbers because there's no longer a criteria. Will it pull certain queries? So now as I look through, there's 1, 2, and 4. Notice 5 is not showing up still, so I have to figure out what's going on there. But anyway, that gives you an idea both of forms and reports. In fact, I'm going to close all. Yep, I'm going to save all. There we go. I'm going to save everything and see if I can actually. So now in my instructor data, I should see 5, which is awesome, right? Okay. So let me see if I can pull Yeah, it still is not pulling up 5 for whatever reason. So I would have to troubleshoot that and figure it out. But anyway, so that takes care of both your forms and your reports, and gives you a basic kind of understanding of both of those. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, good job. Keep up the good work.